Chapter 91. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bang! At this moment, a figure rushed towards him. At a glance, oh my goodness, it turns out that Ace was abused by Akiji. As a flame fruit, he was not only knocked away, but also had frostbite on his body. What a shame. Mach stretched out his hand and caught him steadily. Ace stood firm, turned around, and looked at Mach awkwardly. He was the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates after all. The last time he was caught by Blackbeard, he could still say that he was careless. Now, being abused by Akiji, he really can't find any excuse. However, these two battles made him very aware of his shortcomings. Haki, Taijutsu, he decided that as long as he returned safely this time, he would definitely practice these two, otherwise, it would be too disadvantageous to face these real top powerhouses. Ice Dragon. Akiji gathered the cold air in his right arm and released a 10-meter-long ice dragon. It not only had a strong impact, but also had a terrifying freezing power. Everything was frozen wherever it went. Mach's pupils shrank slightly when he saw this. First it was Doflamingo's spider web, and now it was Akiji's ice dragon. Sure enough, these characters have far more moves than those shown in the anime. Ace still wanted to go up, but Mach didn't give him a chance to show off. He pushed the man aside and swung the Chiu Shui in his hand. The terrifying slash burst out, and a deep mark was cut on the ground wherever it passed. Even Akiji's ice dragon was split in two. Laser Ray, Iron Fist, Ice Age, Hell Dog, as if they had discussed it, Kizaru, Garp, Akiji, and Akainu all gave up Whitebeard and turned to besiege Mach. Originally, Kizaru, Garp, and Akainu were confronting Whitebeard, Mackle, and Diamond Jaws. Their transformation was unexpected. It caught Mach off guard. Not good. Whitebeard, Mackle, Diamond Jaws, and Ace all changed their expressions. Even Enel, who was entangled with Smoker on the side, noticed this and his eyes could not help but condense, because his observation Haki told him that the 4 people besieging Mach were stronger than him. Gurgle, that he couldn't help swallowing his saliva. As arrogant as he was, he couldn't help but tremble with fear. Because even if he faced the attack of these 4 people, he would probably die on the spot. Wow. Mach's face changed drastically. These 4 guys all had the highest combat power of the Navy. Armament Haki hardening. Mach instantly wrapped his body with martial Haki, and at the same time, the ghost energy surged out. He also entered the form of Katetsu, becoming a person similar to the ability of Jean. At the same time, he used the iron block in the 6 styles. Multiple abilities, integrated together, formed his current strongest defense state. Hide. Facing these 4 people, there is no chance at all. Counterattack. 2 fists can't beat 4 hands. In a desperate situation, Mach's eyes have a little more madness, and the expression on his face is even very ferocious. Boom boom. First, Kizaru's laser beam hit Mach's back, the Ice Age froze the ground, and the Hades hit Mach's chest from the front, and Garp fell from the sky and punched Mach on the head. Under the attack of everyone, the ice layer under Mach's feet broke directly. The sea water surged. When everything returned to calm, the place where Mach stood had already turned into a lake, but Mach disappeared there. Hee. Akainu sneered. First, let's deal with you, this troublesome guy, and then it won't be too late to deal with Whitebeard. The novel was taken from the Thrall's website. Close where you're reading it and support us on our website for more free novels. Akiji, Kizaru, and Garp all breathed a sigh of relief. This war with Whitebeard was all because of this guy, and it became out of control. Then the 4 of them turned their heads and looked at Whitebeard, Mackle, Diamond Jaws, and Ace. At this time, the 4 of them had already rushed over. Originally, they wanted to save Mach, but they were still a step too late. But since they were a step too late, saving people became revenge. Mach had done them a favor, but they let Mach be hit into the sea by the Navy in front of them, and their life and death were unknown. They absolutely couldn't accept this. Yo. Kizaru still had a wretched look on his face. Akiji, Akainu, and Garp each found a target. 1-on-1, what are they afraid of? Do you really think that the highest combat power of the Navy is just a decoration? There is only one Whitebeard, which makes them feel pressured. The other three, one-on-one. Hee hee, boom, at this moment, a piece of ice floated out of the sea, huh? Everyone looked over subconsciously, only to see Mok's figure, quickly rising from the ice. Finally standing on the ice, Mok spit a mouthful of saliva with a little blood to one side. He was a little embarrassed at this time. If not, he absorbed the ice at the last moment and froze himself before falling into the sea. I'm afraid it would be really terrible, and the attacks of these people just now, even if he was in the strongest defense state, he was also seriously injured. There were wounds on the head, chest, and back, and blood, flowing, Whitebeard, Mackle, Diamond, Jaws, and Ace were stunned at first, and then they couldn't help laughing, but Garp, Akainu, Akiji, and Kizaru had completely opposite expressions, especially when they saw that the injuries on his body were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. They were a little anxious. The unexpected siege just now only had one chance. It's impossible to have it again. Mok is not a fool. Don't let him go deep alone again, and Whitebeard and others can't be so careless. Mok sneered, originally, I just wanted to kill Akainu today, but now, I will never give up until I drive the navy into the sea. You are looking for death. Akainu's murderous intent almost burst out of his eyes, yo. So scary. Kizaru's eyes also flashed coldly. For the first time, Garp looked at Mok seriously. You know, just now the four of them joined forces. Even Whitebeard couldn't withstand such an attack. This guy actually escaped. It's incredible. Although Mok was very embarrassed at this time, and it looked like he was seriously injured, but this guy actually has a terrifying recovery ability. He recovered in a blink of an eye. If it weren't for the torn clothes and the blood on his body, it would be impossible to tell that this guy was injured. Who is that? Suddenly someone exclaimed, startling everyone. They all followed the man's gaze and looked up. I saw that the waves that Whitebeard had rolled up and were frozen by Akiji before, there was a man standing there. Chapter 92. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mok couldn't help but look over. Just one glance, Mok's pupils shrank slightly. Because the straw hat on this person's head was too conspicuous. Luffy. Shanks. Mok's eyes fell on the other person's arms. He found that they were very healthy. It was probably Straw Hat Luffy. However, he couldn't figure it out. The plot has changed completely, but this guy is still here. How did he come? He turned his head and glanced at Hancock. It must not be her. The most important thing is that he didn't see this guy in the city of Impel Down. Mok was puzzled. Luffy. Not only did he recognize the person, but two very timid guys in the navy hid aside. His eyes almost popped out. One of these two guys has a cross-shaped scar above his right eye, one has a chin like a butt, and his eyebrows are splayed when he has an expression. They are the escaped king Kobe and his partner Barumaba. Why is Kobe the escaped king? Because this guy and Hilyamab hid aside and watched the show at the beginning, and finally joined in. In fact, they were not seriously injured, but in the end, those Navy soldiers who rushed to the front line, even if they were seriously injured, even if they broke their arms and legs, even if they died on the spot, they did not say anything. This guy who was slacking off was good. He could not bear the huge pressure in the war and collapsed directly, a soldier, when the war situation had reached the goal. And when he was about to pursue the victory and annihilate the enemy in one fell swoop, he actually jumped out and said that war was cruel and should not be fought anymore. Oh my, it's too outrageous. You know, he is a soldier. Saying such words during the war is not only challenging the military prestige, but also shaking the morale of the army. Akainu killed him directly at that time, and Garp couldn't say anything. Moreover, what qualifications do you have to say don't fight anymore? Those who were seriously injured, broke their arms and legs, and died on the spot. Only qualified to say that you, a guy who has not fully invested in the war, have what qualifications to say don't fight for these people? And say that war is cruel. Damn, isn't this directed at those who bravely march forward for the Navy and for the justice in their hearts, and who are not afraid of their own safety? He trampled all the sacrifices of the people before into the mud. He is simply a fool. The most important thing is that this statement is not equivalent to completely denying Sengoku's plan against Whitebeard this time. You know, this war was initiated by Sengoku. Because of him, the Navy missed the opportunity to harvest the Whitebeard pirates. This also caused the Navy to pay a heavy price, but the results were not satisfactory. He was also played by Whitebeard before his death, so, after this war. On the contrary, the faults outweighed the merits, which was the biggest factor for Sengoku to step down. If the war continued, the Navy would directly destroy the Whitebeard pirates. Even if Sengoku had no merits, he would not step down. Also, since you can't stand the cruelty of war, why are you a Navy? Anyone knows that in this turbulent world, being a soldier cannot avoid war. The most ridiculous thing is that this guy actually became a hero of the Navy. It's so ironic, he is a hero. Then what about those who are brave in war? Kobe's behavior, no matter which army he is in, is a deserter who shakes the morale of the army. The second desertion was when Kobe stood up and exchanged himself for 800 Navy when Amazon Lily arrested Boa Hancock, and was then captured by Blackbeard and taken to Beehive Island. Garp went to rescue, and Kobe and Bellamar chose to evacuate Beehive Island. Let Garp alone resist the 5 members of the Blackbeard pirates, Akiji, Rain Shiryu, Big Barrel, the huge battleship Garu and the King of Evil Government. Which one is not a first-class strong man? Especially Akiji and Rain Shiryu. The former is an admiral, and the latter is also at the level of a vice-emperor. Therefore, Garp's whereabouts are unknown under the siege of these 5 people. Only those who live and die together with their comrades are heroes. Those who abandon their teachers and run away are deserters and cowards. Is this a naval hero? He is more like a bear. No, calling him a bear is an insult to a bear. Garp's eyes twitched, because at this moment, he had a very bad premonition. Luffy. Ace, who had been rescued, was confused at this moment. He really couldn't understand why this kid got involved. He felt exhausted here. Luffy, let alone the admiral, any capable vice-admiral could take him down. Swish, swish, swish. But at this moment, on the other side of the ice, one after another, figures fell from the sky. Who are these guys? At the scene everyone was stunned. Only Whitebeard looked at Mach, thinking. Unlike them, the hearts of the Navy were in their throats, when these people fell into the middle of the battlefield. Everyone couldn't help but widen their eyes, not only the Navy, but also the pirates and the 7 warlords of the sea, because the people who came were all famous figures. They had also been powerful on the sea. Isn't that the former 7 warlords of the sea Jinpei? Shiryu from Impel Down. Those who had sent prisoners to Impel Down recognized Shiryu and widened their eyes. Catelyn DM. Isn't she detained at the bottom of the underwater prison? This is the most vicious female prisoner in history, a pirate like a witch. The Navy who recognized her felt their scalps tingling. Is that Basque Jot and Abaro Pizarro? One of these 2 guys is an alcoholic who messes around when he is drunk. The other was once one of the most terrible criminals in the world. Their strengths are all very terrifying. However, weren't they imprisoned and impelled down like Catherine Demi and Jinbei? How come they all appeared here? Everyone was very puzzled, but they all opened their mouths wide immediately. Because these 5 people walked behind Mach one by one. The meaning couldn't be more obvious. They are Mach's people. I'm afraid Impel Down has been breached. Anyone with a discerning eye has already seen the problem. But, hasn't Mach always been in the Navy headquarters? How did he get to Impel Down? But the real ruthless people are not these 5 people. It's Redfield and Barrett, Sengoku, Garp, Vice Admiral Tsuru, the 3 admirals, the 7 warlords of the sea, and Whitebeard, Maker, Diamond, Jaws, Ace. The moment this group of people appeared, their eyes stayed on these 2 people. Because they all understood that these 2 people have the strength to turn the tide of the battle. Gulala. Whitebeard burst into laughter. So the old friend Mach was talking about is you. Redfield. Chapter 93. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Then he looked at Barrett, as if he had thought of something, and then said with some emotion, "You should be the boy on Roger's ship. I really miss you." Redfield and Barrett's eyes also fell on Whitebeard. Redfield's mouth corners also rose slightly. Whitebeard, long time no see. They were reminiscing here, but Sengoku's face was gloomy. Who is Redfield? He is a person who can be as famous as Whitebeard and Roger alone. Barrett is a genius in Roger's pirate group, and it is estimated that only Redhair can suppress him. These two characters alone are equivalent to two powerful people at the level of the four emperors, even if their strength is affected by being locked up in the Impel Down. But it is still no problem to stop a general one-on-one, but in this way, Whitebeard, Barrett, Redfield, and Markle can stop Garp and the three admirals. He is still calculating the combat power of both sides. Mach started to assign directly. Jinbei, the one fighting against Smoker, is our vice-captain Enel. You go down to replace him. He is entangled by Smoker and cannot exert his strength. Jinbei nodded, and then immediately rushed towards Enel. Smoker, stop him. There are many people with good eyes in the Navy, and they immediately understood what Mach was planning. Because once the natural Thunder Fruit ability user is separated from Smoker, if anyone wants to entangle him again, I am afraid it will only be the Admiral of the Navy. But now, Garp, Kizaru, Akiji, Akainu, which one can get out? He has been stared at by Whitebeard, Mako, Redfield, and Barrett, so, this guy must not be allowed to get away from Smoker. Otherwise, the entire Navy headquarters, only Marshal Sengoku, will take action personally, but who can suppress Mach and Shiryu, Katrin Diemi, Basque Jot, and Ivalo Pizarro? Swish! Vice Admiral Ghost Spider forced back Makugai, the Lord of Thunder, of the Whitebeard pirates, with one sword, then he rushed towards Jinbei, trying to stop Jinbei. However, another figure flashed out and blocked him. It was Whitebeard's #1 swordsman, Flower Sword, Vista, Boom Boom. Barrett took the lead, and his target was Garp, the strongest of the four Navy men. It was Barrett's style to fight the strongest, fist-bone impact. Garp no longer held back at this time. He came up hard. Barrett was still not afraid, and punched out as well. The two fists hit each other fiercely. Whitebeard and Redfield each met Kizaru and Akiji, Maker, Diamond, Jaws, Ace, Shiryu, Katrin Diemi, Basque Jot, and Ivalo Pizarro rushed towards the vice-admirals. Only Akainu and Mach stood face to face without moving, which was intentional. Because Mach's goal was very clear. Naturally, this guy was left to Mach. Akainu said coldly, Marshal Sengoku, it was a mistake to let you become the 7 warlords of the sea. Mach waved his hand, no, I still have some feelings for the old times. For the sake of Smoker and Tashiji. I will not take the initiative to provoke the Navy. This time, if it weren't for the Navy headquarters, which was bewitched by Tesoro. I want to end me here after the war is over. I can't turn against them. At most, I won't help either side and stand aside to watch the show. Huh. Akainu was stunned. He really didn't know about this. At least he didn't know at this time. He turned his head and looked at Sengoku on the high platform. He frowned slightly, then raised his mouth. It seems that I have wronged Marshal Sengoku. At this point, he changed the subject. He stared at Mach with murderous intent and said, guys like you should be strangled in the cradle. Otherwise, it will become a trouble. That at the same time, Akainu had doubts in his heart. How did this guy know what he, the Admiral of the Navy, didn't know for the time being? It seems that there is a spy for this guy in the Navy. Moreover, his status is definitely not low. But who is this spy? What he didn't know was that Virgo, as the main general of G1, Sengoku had already ordered that as long as Mach was dealt with here, he would immediately take action with other generals to deal with the rest of Mach's group. This is how Virgo got the information that Sengoku wanted to plot against Mach. The more he thought about it, the heavier Akainu wanted to kill Mach. You must die. Moke also sneered, what a coincidence. I thought so too. Dog bites Red Lotus. Akainu first turned his arm into lava, then turned the lava arm into the shape of a dog head and stretched out the lava limbs to attack Moke. The move was very fast. The dog head made of lava opened its mouth and bit Mach. Mach was not afraid at all and punched out. The shock ability was activated, and the lava dog head in front of him was directly blasted into slag. Boom, but the next second, the ground under Mach's feet immediately turned into lava. Mach's face changed drastically, and he jumped up and stayed in the air. Only then did he realize that one of Akainu's feet had turned into lava. I think that this is why his feet turned into lava just now. Sure enough, it was a new move again. Mach's vigilance increased greatly, and then he punched Akainu. The shock ability was activated again, and Akainu was directly hit by a wound. However, the wound was immediately restored under the elemental ability, however, although Akainu was not injured. But Akainu narrowed his eyes at this time. Because he saw that Mach's hand touched and was hit by a punch to create a crack in the space, he suddenly had an ominous premonition. At this time, when his hand had already touched the cracked space, he could no longer suppress the corner of his mouth. His eyes flashed with excitement. Sure enough, this is feasible. Time is the supreme, space is the king. Fate is not out, cause and effect are the king. These four things are absolutely worshipped by all the worlds. But time cannot be touched at all. The same is true for fate and cause and effect. However, when he saw Whitebeard punching out a crack in the space, he suddenly realized something that he could not touch at ordinary times. Surprisingly, it appeared in front of him. Then what is there for him to hesitate? It's just that when he fought against Whitebeard, he got the Tremor Fruit first. After all, with the Tremor Fruit, is there any chance for space? Mach experienced it carefully, then the Chiu Shui in his hand suddenly swung out, and a slash burst out. The target was Akainu. Akainu was puzzled, because in his opinion, this was a completely stupid behavior. Because the flying slash cannot be entangled with the armament haki, and Mach has not mastered the armament haki, so, for the natural type, this kind of slash should not be ignored at all. Isn't this just a waste of energy? But when this slash came in front of him, he realized the horror of this slash. Not good. Akainu's pupils trembled. Chapter 94. You are listening at novelfold.audio. Because it was discovered that the continuous slash was accompanied by something similar to black lightning. However, it was definitely not the entanglement of the Overlord color, which he had seen before. But what exactly is this? Akainu felt a little uneasy, because this thing gave him a strong sense of crisis, as if it could threaten his life. Suddenly his eyes opened sharply, because he thought of the place where Mach touched the space with his hand and a crack appeared. Then he thought that Mach had a similar ability immediately after touching Whitebeard's Tremor-Tremor Fruit, space crack. But the space crack that Whitebeard punched out was white. By the way, this is the difference between a crack and a complete shattering. This is a real space crack, hell dog. Then Akainu quickly stretched out his lava-like arm to attack Mach. This move not only has a very fast attack speed, but also has extraordinary power. In the original comic, Akainu used this move to knock off half of Whitebeard's face, so, this is definitely one of Akainu's strongest moves. At this time, he was definitely doing his best, but he was horrified to find out, when his Hades dog met Mach's slash, it was cut open as easily as a piece of paper. Since he ate the natural magma fruit, there have been many people who can block his move. However, there has never been one who can break this move so easily. No, today he met one. Then, the slash continued to come. In a blink of an eye, it was in front of him. At this time, Akainu did not dare to block this move. Shave. Akainu immediately entered a high-speed state, and the slash brushed past his ear, narrowly avoiding this move. When Akainu appeared again, he was already 4 or 5 meters away, but at this time, he raised his eyebrows, because he felt a burning pain on his ears and face. Although, this pain was nothing to him who grew up fighting pirates all the way, but, pain, what do you say injured? This shocked him greatly. He subconsciously touched it with his hand, and blood immediately stained his hand. The pupils in Akainu's eyes shrank suddenly. How is it possible? At this time, his ear was missing a piece of flesh, and there was a lightning-like wound on his face. Half of his face was covered with blood. The injury was not serious, but it looked very scary. The corners of Mach's mouth rose slightly. That's right, he can't release the armament haki, so even if his slash can match Hawkeye's. But it still can't hurt the natural ability user at all. The ability of the devil fruit is the same, but the space fruit is different. Under normal circumstances, why can't the natural system be hurt? That's because you can't really touch it, you can only wrap it with armament haki, but the space ability breaks the space. Forming a real space crack, this thing has a strong tearing force, and can devour everything it touches. Even if it is a natural element, it will still devour it. So, Akainu showed a wound directly on his body. Seeing that this attack worked, Mach couldn't help but laugh. This move is a slash combined with spatial ability. It's named Space Slash. How about it? Does it taste good? Looking for death, Akainu was furious. Big firefight, that he first turned his arm into a huge lava fist made of lava, and then simulated the impact of a volcanic eruption to fire his fist. The power was enough to instantly crush and evaporate a large iceberg that was dozens of times larger than the giant's, and this time his target was Mach. Seeing this, Mach smiled indifferently and raised his hand to the front, space barrier. Instantly, a cube-shaped space appeared and protected Mach in it. Boom! Akainu's big firefight hit it hard. It turned into countless volcanic bombs and went in the opposite direction towards Akainu himself. Akainu, you know, his big firefight will turn into countless volcanic bombs after the explosion, and the power of each volcanic bomb can easily destroy a super-large warship. The power was absolutely terrifying. He never thought that he would be hit by this move. Although it couldn't hurt him. But it made him feel humiliated. He couldn't help but clench his fists and stared at Mach. At this time, Mach was a little regretful and shocked. Damn, I should have absorbed the power of space earlier. In that way, when Garp, Kizaru, Akiji, and Akainu besieged him just now, he could easily block them, because there is no one in this world who can blast through space. Even Whitebeard can only make cracks appear in space or distort space. Why is the defense ability of the superhuman barrier fruit so strong? Because it is a lower-level fruit of the space fruit. But it also has space attributes, TSK. Mach laughed, and suddenly, his defense was invincible. At the same time, Mach stretched out his hand and aimed at Akainu's position. The space ability was activated, and many cracks appeared in the space around Akainu. Not good. Akainu's face changed drastically. Shave, having suffered a loss once, he dared not be careless again. He directly entered the high-speed state, quickly dodged. He didn't even dare to let the space cracks touch him. Mach frowned, because he found that the power was much worse than he expected. It was completely different from the space cracks that were just attached to the slash. It seems that large-scale space cracks need to be continuously developed. Only then, if it is continuously developed, unless he never replaces the ability again. Or turn it into a permanent ability. The former is unlikely. For the latter, he will have to reach the level of awakening when he absorbs the fruit to have the third permanent ability. It is still unknown when it will be. Then try this. After Mach put Chiu Shui into the scabbard, he punched both sides with his fists. The shock ability was activated, and the space above the fists began to crack. And under Mach's continuous force, the cracks in the space became more and more. At the same time, the nearby space began to distort. Making this piece of space fragile, Akainu's face became extremely ugly, because he found that the distorted space actually surrounded him. Although it did not cause any harm to him, it made him very uneasy. Space collapse. The next second, Mach took this opportunity to activate the space ability. Directly let the space that had become fragile under the shock ability be hit hard. The space around Akainu first appeared a large number of small cracks. Then these cracks spread rapidly, until the space around Akainu was full of cracks. It was like a tempered glass that was shattered but not completely shattered. Gurgle. Akainu couldn't help but swallow his saliva, and a chill rushed from his heels to his head. Chapter 95. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He has experienced hundreds of large and small battles, and his combat experience is extremely rich. He also has experience fighting against the world's top strongmen. But it is really unique that he is helpless like now. Counterattack. The distorted space around him surrounded him. His attack, if he wanted to hit Mach, would first hit this distorted space. However, the space around him, it was already on the verge of breaking, and he was afraid that it would be completely broken in the next second. How dare he move? Not good. Zhangguo saw this scene from a distance, and immediately realized Akainu's danger, and his face changed drastically. At this time, Zhangguo could no longer be stable. The current situation is already very unfavorable to the Navy. If Akainu has something, then the Navy will lose its highest combat power, and then it will collapse across the board. Then this war initiated by him will end with the failure of the Navy. This is what he absolutely does not want to see. although, the war has developed to this point and is completely out of his control. He also knew that after the war, he would definitely step down from the position of Admiral of the Navy, but, in his hands, the strength of the Navy headquarters must not be completely destroyed. Otherwise, his name, Sengoku, will be a shame for the Navy and a sinner for the Navy. In an instant, Sengoku turned into a giant Buddha, swoosh. On this side, Jinbei successfully replaced Enel and fought with Smoker. Enel, who got rid of Smoker's entanglement, was like a wild horse running away. With a flash, he stood behind Mach and faced Sengoku in the giant Buddha state, as long as it was not a close combat, as long as it was not domineering. Enel was not afraid of anyone, even Sengoku in the giant Buddha state. 200 million volts, Thunder God. Enel directly launched the strongest move, and he released all the 200 million volts of lightning in his body, surrounded all the released lightning on himself, and transformed into the posture of a giant thunder god, in the form of the god of thunder. He was even bigger than the Buddha of Sengoku. Shock. Enelu's sudden outburst made Sengoku, who was furious, pause, and at this moment, Sengoku completely lost the chance to rescue Akainu. I'm afraid that Mach shouted loudly, and his physical strength was immediately drained. Mach's legs softened and he almost fell down. His continuous fighting had consumed a lot of physical strength. Now the two abilities were fully activated, draining his last physical strength. He was able to stand, all because of his strong will. Of course, the rapid consumption of physical strength, in exchange for the effect, is also very amazing. Boom. Around Akainu, the originally twisted and cracked space directly shattered. And those shattered spaces, like broken glass, fell from the air one after another, and after the space was shattered, another black hole appeared. The black hole produced a terrifying absorption and tearing force, sucking back the broken and fallen space fragments. This is the self-repair of the space itself. It was normal for space, but it was extremely dangerous for Akainu who was in it. Every piece of space debris pierced his body like a blade. Soon he was stabbed into a hornet's nest. But this was not the key, because it could not hurt him. The key was that the black hole's terrifying absorption and tearing force, when sucking back the space debris. He also suffered the same absorption and tearing force. Not good. Akainu's face changed drastically, because the absorption and tearing force was too terrifying. Even as an admiral, he could not resist it. It was said to be slow, but it was actually fast. The space debris was quickly sucked back, and the space returned to its original state. And Akainu, under the absorption and tearing force, was also shattered. In the end, the whole person disappeared in the black hole. Akainu, Kizaru, Akiji, Garp, and Sengoku all exclaimed. Although, they usually did not deal with Akainu, and they were even from different factions. But that was just their internal navy. I definitely don't want him to die in this war, because the loss of Akainu will be a huge loss for the entire navy. It will also cause a huge blow to the reputation of the navy. Whitebeard, Gulala, the death of Akainu made him feel relieved and he couldn't help laughing. Catherine Daimi, Baskjot, Avalo Pizarro, they were also surprised. They knew that the captain was very strong, but they never thought that he was so strong. He is the admiral of the navy. Redfield and Barrett's eyes changed when they looked at Mach, before, although they also recognized the strength of Mach. However, they still did not put him on the same level. The two of them looked at each other. It seems that they underestimated this Mach, let alone them. Even Mach was a little bit unbelievable at this time. He really did not expect that the combination of Jinjin and space would be so terrifying, killed Akainu in one move. Oh my god. Before this, he did not dare to think about it, but think about it carefully, and it makes sense. You know, this is a black hole formed after the space is broken. The fact that Akainu was not swallowed up is enough to prove his strength. After all, this is a suction force that is 100 times more terrifying than Blackbeard's dark water. Of course, think about it carefully, this is the first time he has used these two abilities, therefore, it is impossible to predict its power. After catching Akainu off guard, he must be well prepared next time he faces other people. It is absolutely impossible to succeed in one fell swoop. After all, no one will let him trap people in the twisted space. Those who have seen this move can no longer be so stupid. It's over. The Admiral of the Navy was killed. At this moment, everyone who was watching the live broadcast of this war was stunned. The Admiral of the Navy is the highest combat power of the Navy. In people's hearts, he is invincible, but now, right in front of them, he was killed by a pirate. In an instant, the tall and majestic image of the Admiral of the Navy collapsed. At the same time, their confidence in the Navy was also shaken. Because they can no longer see any hope, the Navy will lose this war. Gurgle, hiss. Some people swallowed their saliva, and some took a breath. The Navy on the battlefield changed their faces one by one, and their eyes were full of horror. At the same time, many of them also shook their confidence in victory. That's right, Akainu's death shook the morale of the entire Navy. Chapter 96. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Asshole. In the Holy Land, the 5 elders could no longer hold their ground. One of them, wearing a white Taoist robe, bald head and glasses, cursed loudly. He was the only one among the 5 elders who was not wearing a suit and had a beard, and he was holding a samurai sword in his hand. He was Saint Nasajuro. At this time, his hand was already on the hilt of the sword. If he was there, he would have drawn the sword long ago. Beside him was a man wearing a dark red suit, with blonde hair and a golden beard, and a scar on his chest. It was Saint Pitt, and his face was also very ugly at this time. He then said, "We can't go on like this, otherwise the Navy will collapse across the board." Saint Wakuri wore a dark green suit, was bald, and had 2 splayed beards. At this time, he was stroking his beard and said in a cold voice, "It seems that we have to bring CP0 to support in person, otherwise once the Navy collapses across the board, I am afraid that the relatively stable 4 seas will riot, not to mention the Grand Line." The 2 saints Maz and Satan looked at each other and nodded. "We agree." Then he changed the subject. "However, the Holy Land cannot be left unguarded. Why not, 3 of us go, and bring the alternate generals Tautu, Chatan and CP0, and we should be able to solve the problem." This statement was agreed by everyone. Not to mention leaving everyone behind. At least they can repel the people and even capture a few important figures. In that way, the situation can be saved. Gulala. Whitebeard saw at a glance that Mach had reached the extreme. He said to Katrin Diami, Basque Jot, and Avalo Pizarro, "Protect your captain to retreat. We, the Whitebeard pirates, will take care of this." Then he changed the subject. "Mach has killed Akainu, and our Whitebeard pirates cannot fall behind." He pointed the knife in his hand at Garp. "Kill him. Mach, a junior, can kill an admiral. His Whitebeard pirates must kill a stronger one. Otherwise, where will they put their face?" "It's Dad." The pirates were like chicken blood, and they rushed towards the Navy in front of them regardless of life and death. The captain and the captains also rushed towards the vice-admiral and the 7 warlords of the sea. At the same time, Enelu and Sengoku started a crazy fight. You punch, I punch, it's so fierce. Enelu's posture of fighting Sengoku also made everyone's eyes light up. Even Whitebeard, Garp, Redfield, and Barrett were all surprised. After all, they all knew Sengoku's strength. At this time, Sengoku was getting more and more shocked, because he found that Enelu actually had strength that was not inferior to his, but Sengoku was Sengoku, and soon found that Enelu had not awakened the armament haki. This made his eyes suddenly light up. Buddha fist. In the giant Buddha state, he used a fist with an air wave to directly hit Enelu. The fist was so powerful that it could easily collapse the execution platform of the Marine headquarters in the original work. However, this time, he also wrapped his fist with armament haki. At the same time, Enelu in the Thunder God state also punched forward. Boom boom. The 2 fists hit each other fiercely, and then Enelu was shocked back a few steps. Enelu's face froze. They were evenly matched just now. How could it be so? His eyes then fell on Sengoku's huge Buddha fist. His eyes couldn't help but condense, and he gritted his teeth. It's armament haki again. At the same time, Jinbei, who replaced him to fight Smoker, turned the situation around. Smoker stared at Jinbei, his eyes full of fear. He was very arrogant, but he was not stupid. He could fight with the natural type Thunder Fruit ability user just now. The main reason was that they were all natural type and neither of them had armament haki. The attacks of both sides could not cause damage to each other at all. He subconsciously glanced at Enelu who was fighting with Sengoku. He couldn't help but clench his fists. The desire to become stronger has never been so strong. Fishman Karate 5000 watts punch. Jinbei flashed and came in front of Smoker, punching him. The target was Smoker's abdomen. The most important thing was that Jinbei's fist was still wrapped with armament hockey. Bang! Smoker was blown away and hit the wall of the port hard, exploding into a cloud of smoke. When he regained his human form again, Smoker's expression was a little distorted. His abdominal muscles twitched from time to time. Puff! The last mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. White fist. However, Smoker was not someone who could be easily defeated. People who admit defeat. Smoker first turned his arms and legs into smoke, and then his limbs turned into smoke, then stretched his smoked limbs to violently launch his fists and kicks towards Jinbei. I have to say, this move is quite fast. In an instant, he was in front of Jinbei, but Jinbei didn't tolerate him either. The arms wrapped around the weapon-colored hands directly grabbed the flying fist, then another punch. Smoker was knocked out again. Brush. At this moment, Ghost Spider finally seized an opportunity and forced Huajian back. Then he blocked his body. Smoker wasn't stupid either, heading towards Enel Road quickly, because he knew very well that his biggest role in this war was to entangle Enelu. Then he is equivalent to exerting a combat power that is no less than that of a naval admiral, after all, in the entire battlefield and the navy, except for the general. Only he, who is also of the nature type, can entangle Enelu. Whoosh! At this time, Luffy fell from the sky and landed next to Ace. Ace. You are here to cause trouble. Garp. He must be here to cause trouble. Both of them were numb. Mork almost laughed out loud when he saw this scene. Immediately, he and Katrin Deem, Basque Chote, and Aburo Pizarro withdrew from the battlefield. He is not a pushy person, he urgently needed to regain his physical strength. On a battlefield like this, without physical strength, he would be like cattle and sheep at the mercy of others. With the help of Jinbei, Redfield, Barrett and Eniro, plus Mork, Akainu was killed again. The Navy's morale has been shattered. Even without Mach and his team, the Whitebeard pirates have the absolute upper hand in this battle. Soon, Mach and the others arrived at the edge of the battlefield. Terran Daime, Basque Chote, and Abuelo Pizarro retreated to protect Mach so that Mach could rest assured to recover his strength. Mach, on the other hand, was controlling the power of the Holy Sword to quickly recover himself. Chapter 97. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Mach recovered his strength and was about to go into battle again. The Marine headquarters had already been beaten to pieces by these guys. Enelu had also withdrawn from the battle, because Sengoku was still stronger than him after all. However, no one could stop him from leaving. Of course, Sengoku had consumed a lot of his strength to repel Enelu. At this time, he was already a little out of breath, but what he had to face at this time, it was Mach who had recovered his strength, and Catherine Daime, Basque Jot, and Ivalo Pizarro. Sengoku's face turned extremely ugly. Redfield, Barrett, and Whitebeard were also injured at this time. On the Navy side, Garp, Akiji, and Kizaru were not much better, but under the leadership of Phoenix, Marco, Diamond Jaws, and Flower Sword Vista, they suppressed the Navy. After all, there were only a handful of vice admirals in the Marine headquarters who could stop them. In addition, there are many captains and captains under the command of the Whitebeard pirates. The Navy is actually inferior to the middle-level combat power, if it weren't for Sengoku sending out pacifists at a critical moment to turn the situation around. I'm afraid that this time the Navy's middle-level combat power will be lost a lot. The most important thing is that the 7 warlords have quietly retreated to the side. They have become a neutral place. This means that the Navy has lost several important combat forces. It is precisely because of this neutral move that the Navy has seen that the 7 warlords will never be used by the Navy. Therefore, the abolition of the 7 warlords is on the agenda. Of course, this is a later story. At this time, Mach stood in front of Sengoku and looked at him curiously. For words flashed in his eyes, ready to move, because he was very curious. Like Sengoku, his ability can play a role in the fantasy beast species. Boom! But at this moment, the ice layer on one side was blasted hard. A group of people appeared in front of everyone. The huge movement immediately alarmed the entire battlefield. Everyone looked over. Mach recognized them at a glance. The leaders were the 3 elders, Saint Isambaron v. Nasajuro, Saint Shepherd 10 Pit, and Saint Topman Vachali. Following him were the admiral substitutes Tautu and Chatan. There were also 3 masked CP0 trio. It's the 5 elders. That's the admiral substitute Tautu and Chatan, CP0, the navy, whose morale was originally low, was like taking stimulants at this time, and they became desperate again. Because of the arrival of these people, they once again saw the hope of victory. Whitebeard, Redfield, Barrett, and Mock looked at each other. They knew that the situation had changed again. It seemed that they had to fight hard. What if they were afraid? Everyone's eyes became sharp. When everyone's attention was drawn to Mock, he flashed to Whitebeard's side. In Whitebeard's puzzled and surprised eyes, he put his hand on him. The power of the holy sword poured into Whitebeard's body. Whitebeard's body was shaken because he felt his injuries were recovering rapidly. Not only the new injuries, but also the old injuries were recovering rapidly. His face changed again and again, but his eyes were full of excitement. As he got older, the side effects of the Tremor-Tremor Fruit became more and more obvious. At this time, he was not only old and weak, but also injured. His strength was only 70% to 80% of his peak. Because, under full strength, if the injury broke out, he would die first, not the enemy. But now, gulalalala, Whitebeard couldn't help but laugh out loud. The pupils of Redfield and Barrett couldn't help shrinking slightly. Although they couldn't see, Whitebeard's old injuries were healed. However, the injury that Whitebeard had just been shot by Kizaru was visibly recovered. The two looked at each other, and the corners of their mouths couldn't help but rise. They really didn't expect that Mock actually had this ability. If so, they could fight without restraint later, as long as they didn't die. It's not impossible to exchange injuries for injuries. What would it be like when 3 emperors went crazy without any scruples? It would definitely be like the end of the world. Tsk tisk. Mock couldn't help but laugh, and Redfield and Barrett also laughed. But sometimes, there are always some guys who are unexpected. For example, the deserter King Kobe suddenly went crazy for some reason. He was just timid, but he suddenly ran out. He stood among the crowd. He said loudly, "Stop. Stop trampling on life." At this time, Kobe was already in tears. Every time we fight, someone will die, and their families will wait for them to go home. We have made a lot of meaningless sacrifices, and we should stop the endless war. Whitebeard, is this little navy not very smart? Redfield, this kid, can't he be Whitebeard or Mock's subordinate? Barrett, Waste, Isambaron v. Nasajuro Saint, Shepherd 10 Pit Saint, Topman Vachali Saint. The 3 people were silent, but their silence was deafening. The 3 of them looked at Sengoku together, as if to say, is this the elite tax of your navy headquarters? Come to make fun of it. Sengoku was also silenced, glazed at Garp, but it was a bit tricky. After all, Kobe is Garp's disciple. Always consider Garp's face. But in this situation, he had to take action against Kobe. Otherwise, it would be hard to convince the crowd. He couldn't help but take a few steps forward. At this time, Mock laughed even more happily. You are sincere and sincere. The timing is also well grasped. Just when he and Whitebeard had the upper hand, he didn't stand up. But when the situation turned around and was once again favorable to the Navy and the world government, he stood up and said such a sentence. Yes, yes, yes. That's it. This is the deserter King Kobe. He stood up to show his kindness only after the war tended to win, ha ha ha. But, speaking of this, deserter King Kobe has already appeared, and the King of Force should not be far away, right? Sure enough, a group of people appeared on the other side. His appearance seemed to have a domineering color. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Red hair. The moment they saw him, everyone's face changed. Especially the 5 elders, Sengoku, Garp and others. The morale of the Navy was hit again. Each of them had a bit of fear on their faces. A Whitebeard, who is also one of the 4 emperors, has already made them suffer. Now another of the 4 emperors has arrived. How can one not lose heart? The red-haired man smiled. Give me some face. Chapter 98. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Whitebeard, we have fought to this point, why should I give you a face? Redfield, who is this brat? Barrett, isn't this the little red-haired guy on the ship? Are you pretending like this now? The 3-5 elders, we have all come out, and you say you don't want to fight. Then where will our face be? Sengoku, Garp, Ikiji, Kizaru, Akainu is dead, you say you will give you a face. Can your face be worth one Akainu? If you have the ability, you can bring Akainu back to life. Mach smiled, his goal had been achieved, whether to continue fighting, expand the results, or stop fighting, he didn't care. Then he moved his mind and took a step forward, I can give you this face. But one day I need you to give me a face. Can you give it? The red-haired man narrowed his eyes when he heard it, he took a deep look at Mach, then laughed, of course, then he changed the subject, the premise is that you have the qualifications. Gulala. Whitebeard laughed, then he said meaningfully, he really has the qualifications. I'm afraid you, red hair, will really give him face in the future. Red hair was slightly stunned, he couldn't help but look at Mach again, but this time his eyes were different. Not only him, but also the crew around him, if someone else said this, they would sneer. But this came from Whitebeard, so they had to be cautious. Then, they finally recognized Mach, 7 warlords of the sea Mach. They have been on the road, so they really don't know the specific situation of this battle. He was very confused and thought to himself, shouldn't the 7 warlords of the sea be in the same group as the navy? Why is Whitebeard still supporting him? Finally, his eyes fell on Katrin Daimi, Basque Jot, Avalo Pizarro, Enalu and Jinbei. When he saw Jinbei, his eyes flashed, because Jinbei is also a 7 warlords of the sea, but at this time Jinbei is standing behind Mach as a subordinate. This is a lot of information. Red Hair's pupils shrank slightly, and he said with interest, it's not impossible, that Shanks, the happiest person at the scene was Luffy. Seeing Shanks' eyes shining, he ran over. Shanks, you bastard, Garp gritted his teeth. If it weren't for Sengoku holding him aside, I'm afraid he would have rushed over and punched Red Hair in the face. He fooled his grandson into becoming a pirate. Luffy, you're here too. Red Hair was a little surprised, but at the same time, he glanced at Mach and Whitebeard again, because the meaning of these two people's words was very clear. Mach didn't want to fight anymore, and Whitebeard expressed his support. This is easy to solve. Then he looked at the 5 elders and Sengoku. What do you think? The 3-5 elders and Sengoku frowned, and the 4 looked at each other. There was a bit of anger in their eyes. The navy suffered such a great loss, even Akainu died. Truce. Is it possible? Red Hair raised his eyebrows, and his hand was already on the hilt of the sword. Don't you want to give me Red Hair a face? The Conqueror's haki burst out instantly and swept around. The novel was taken from the Rala's website. Close where you're reading it and support us on our website for more free novels. The people present all changed their faces. It has to be said that Red Hair's Conqueror's haki is really the best in the world. No one present can compare. Barrett, standing in the crowd, was also shocked. You know, when Roger's pirate group broke up, he was already one of the few strong men in the world, but the red-haired boy in front of him had just boarded the ship not long ago. He and the other red-nosed boy were just trainee crew members. But he never expected that he already possessed such a terrifying Conqueror's haki. He had only seen this level of Conqueror's haki on one person, that was Roger. The faces of the 3-5 elders, Sengoku, Garp, Kizaru, and Ikiji were extremely ugly. Red Hair's move was a show of face. If they didn't want to give him face, he would use force to subdue them. Damn, if it was normal times, if Red Hair dared to do this, they wouldn't mind fighting with the Red Hair pirates. Let Red Hair experience their anger. But now, the Whitebeard pirates and the Mach pirates have already made them very tired. If they add a royal pirate group, even if they still win, they are afraid that the loss will be so great that the entire world government can't bear it. So, their faces changed again and again, but in the end, he didn't express his opinion. He just stared at the red-haired man. Seeing this, the red-haired man didn't force them to express their opinions. After all, keeping silent is an attitude in itself. Red Hair smiled and turned to look at Luffy. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Can you talk to me? Luffy, the crazy fan, nodded wildly, and couldn't control the expression on his face with excitement. At this time, Red Hair also saw Redfield and Barrett in the crowd, and he was slightly stunned. One of these two people is a person that Roger is afraid of, the other is his senior, on the same ship. Red Hair, Barrett, long time no see. Barrett nodded, with a bit of disbelief. It's been a long time since we last met. I really didn't expect that the kid at the time actually had such strength. Red Hair, why don't you go on my pirate ship and talk? Barrett was silent for a while, then said, okay. Whitebeard, Mock, and Redfield looked at each other. Gulalalala. Whitebeard couldn't help laughing. Redfield, we are old acquaintances. Get on my ship and I'll take you for a while. Redfield nodded. Finally, Whitebeard looked at Mock. You first saved Ace, and then avenged Big Whirlpool Spider Squad. We have to thank you very much. Ace immediately stepped forward. Yes, if you have any problems in the future, just ask. I, Ace, will definitely help you and will never refuse. As soon as Ace said this, Whitebeard, Phoenix, Marco, Diamond Jaws, and Flower Sword Vista all changed their faces. Because Ace's promise is a bit big, however, they, the Whitebeard pirates, will repay the favor. So, they didn't say anything to stop it, but they had some thoughts in their hearts. After all, even a fool can understand Mock is no longer a Shichibukai, and with the strength of him and his men. Once he leaves here, I'm afraid he will compete for the position of the four emperors, and the target is most likely Kaido and Big Mom. But everyone knows the relationship between these two people, alas. At most, when Mock fights for the position of the four emperors, he can block one of them for him, which can be regarded as repaying this favor. Whitebeard has already made up his mind. Chapter 99. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mock took a look at Barrett, who followed Red Hair, and then took his people to board Whitebeard's pirate ship. The chances of winning over Redfield and Barrett were too small, so he had been mentally prepared. He didn't hesitate too much. Red Hair, Whitebeard, and Mock left in a very cool manner. But the people in the Navy headquarters looked at each other in bewilderment. The 3-5 elders, Saint Isambron V, Nasajuro, Saint Shepherd 10 Pit, and Saint Topman Vachili, looked at Sengoku deeply. Sengoku's face froze, and then he smiled bitterly, because he already knew that his life was over. Mock and his party held banquets for several days and nights in the Whitebeard Pirates. It was so fun. But the happy time passed quickly, and a few days later, Mock took his people away from the Whitebeard Pirates. Jinbei looked at Mock. Captain, where are we going now? Mock, Dressrosa. Dressrosa? Jinbei, Enel, Catherine DM, Basque Jot, and Avalo Pizarro all showed surprised expressions. Catherine DM, Basque Jot, and Avalo Pizarro have already made up for the situation outside in the past few days, so, they also know Dressrosa, which is the territory of Doflamingo, the 7 warlords of the sea. In the Battle of the Top, this guy had one leg cut off by the captain. Unexpectedly, the first person the captain wants to do now is him. What a big grudge. Mock's mouth corners slightly raised, because the goal this time is to destroy the entire Don Quixote family. You know, the Navy suffered such a big loss this time. Maybe there will still be a large conscription. At that time, Virgo will have a chance. Maybe he can compete for the position of Admiral of the Navy. After all, Akainu is dead. Sengoku is going to step down. Akiji will definitely take the position this time. After all, the position of the Navy Admiral cannot be given to that guy Kizaru. In this way, just like the original work, there are 2 Admiral positions at once. After destroying the entire Don Quixote family, he will design a plan for him to capture M. Caesar Clown to make a contribution, and finally eat the strongest artificial fruit, the dragon fruit. Wait until he gets the training method of the armament color technique, so that his terrifying armament color can exert its true power. Then with his physical skills, domineering, and his qualifications in the Navy, maybe he can really sit in the position of Pirate Admiral. TSK. A Navy Admiral is his undercover, so what else can the Navy and the world government hide from him? Just thinking about it, it's cool. But in a blink of an eye, after all, Kaido has been looking for Ada and others in the Golden City, so, he immediately said, you go to the New World to meet up with other crew members. They have already occupied Guild Tesoro's Golden City. You go there and make sure to defend it for me. It will be our base camp, that Guild Tesoro's Golden City. Jinbei was stunned at first, then shocked, and finally overjoyed, except for Enel, who didn't have much concept of money. He looked indifferent. Catherine Diami, Basque Jot, and Ivalo Pizarro were also excited. Who doesn't like money? Jinbei, what about Dressrosa? Mach raised his eyebrows slightly. I have to go to Dressrosa once. So, let's separate for the time being. Jinbei, Catherine Diami, Basque Jot, and Ivalo Pizarro said in unison, Captain, don't worry, we will definitely defend the Golden City. Dressrosa, Doflamingo had a gloomy face at this time. At this time, senior officials of the Don Quixote family, such as Toribol, Pica, Diamante, Lao Ji, Jorah, and Gladius, also looked solemn. Their eyes fell on Doflamingo's broken leg from time to time. They didn't say it, but they had many thoughts in their hearts. Toribol took a deep breath, and then asked tentatively, Dover, I'll ask Caesar Kalon to come. With him, your broken leg can be reattached with a suitable one. Doflamingo was stunned when he heard this, then he laughed. He finally heard a good news in the past few days, nodded, okay. Let him come right over. Speaking of this, as if he had thought of something, he immediately added, it's a good opportunity for Monet to come back as well. She and Sucrose haven't seen each other for a long time. Treble, yes. At this time, Doflamingo seemed to be in a much better mood, and turned to Diamante and said, how is the contact with Kaido going? Diamante, Kaido was originally going to Guild Tesoro's Golden City, to deal with the crew members of the mock pirates, and at the same time to rescue Jack and eliminate the two traitors. However, Guild Tesoro's Golden City is a ship. Once it starts moving, it is difficult to track unless you reveal your location. So, after a few days, there is no trace of the Golden City at all. Speaking of this, he paused, this is a good thing for us. So, as soon as Kaido proposed this plan, he immediately agreed. Because if they join forces to take down Mach, then the crew members of Mach will have to hand over Jack and the two traitors for Mach. But they never thought that at this moment, Mach had already arrived in Dressrosa. However, Mach was not in a hurry to deal with Doflamingo. After all, there was a pair of princesses, Rebecca and Violet, who he had long coveted. TSK, these are princesses. Just thinking about it makes people excited. What's more, they are. The most important thing is that these two princesses are not just vases. Rebecca is a swordsman with good swordsmanship and decent talent. If she changes a teacher and a different environment, there is hope for her to become a swordsman. As for Violet, she is the user of the superhuman stare fruit. A woman with good eyesight, who can see through all lies. When using the ability of the staring fruit, the user can see through objects and what people are thinking. As long as the target is within the field of vision of the user, the target will be naked, and the inner information will be read instantly, regardless of whether the opponent is conscious or lying. The user can read what he is thinking. At the moment, the user is usually in a state of clairvoyance, which allows the vision to be centered on the self and observe from a distance within a radius of 4,000 kilometers. It can be said that her ability is very suitable for intelligence. At the same time, it is also suitable to be a lookout on the ship. With her, she can always predict the enemy first. Even if someone is on the sea, they can find the ambush first. This is also the reason why Doflamingo spared her life, because her ability is too useful. Chapter 100. You are listening at novelfold.audio. Rebecca, who was in the prison of the fighting arena, was still excited at this time, because she got a piece of news. That is, Doflamingo had one leg cut off by a guy named Mach. This is definitely the only good news she has received in more than 10 years, how can she not be excited? She really wanted to go out and shout loudly to vent the grievances in her heart for many years. Who are you? At this moment, a cry of surprise came from the position where the guards were on one side. Rebecca was puzzled, because no one should come at this time. Moreover, it was not her turn to fight today. That a scream sounded, and then a figure fell heavily in front of the cage where she was. Rebecca's pupils shrank sharply. because she could see at a glance that this guy was the guard of this area. Surprisingly, someone dared to kill the guard here. Rebecca was extremely shocked, because this was equivalent to declaring war on the entire Don Quixote family, and even provoking Doflamingo, in the kingdom of Dressrosa, who has the courage? Who has the strength? Tap, 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 a sound of footsteps sounded, and every step seemed to step on her heart, making her very excited, because, in her opinion, such a person is a good person. Soon a mighty and handsome man came in front of her. Just one glance, Rebecca's pupils shrank like needles. Although she had never seen this man in person, the portraits of this guy and his crew had already spread all over Dressrosa. It can be seen how much Doflamingo was afraid of him, fearing that he would sneak in, but in her opinion, how could such a person sneak in? He came in openly. Could you, Doflamingo, stop him? Seeing Rebecca's expression, Mok knew that she recognized him. The corners of her mouth could not help but rise slightly. It seems that you know me. Rebecca nodded excitedly. You cut off one of Doflamingo's legs. After the excitement, she added, I don't know, why did you come to me? Rebecca is not stupid. Mok is clearly coming for her. But she really can't figure out, what can Mok value about her? The only thing she can show is that she is young and beautiful. If a person like Mok is short of young and beautiful women? As long as he wants, what kind of women are not there? Mok doesn't like to beat around the bush, and said bluntly, I have taken a fancy to you and Violet. If you are willing to become my women, then I will help you take back the kingdom of Dressrosa. Ah! Rebecca didn't expect that the other party really took a fancy to her beauty. What's more, he actually took a fancy to Violet, who is her. The guy in front of him actually wanted them to share a husband. Simply, Rebecca was extremely annoyed, but also extremely excited. She was annoyed because the man in front of her was too much. She was excited because she finally saw the hope of restoring her country after so many years. However, she reacted quickly and immediately retorted, but even if I don't agree, you will take action to get rid of Doflamingo, right? After all, you have already formed an irreconcilable feud. Mok nodded, that's right. Rebecca, then why should I agree? Mok smiled, this time I came to get rid of Doflamingo. But you have to understand that getting rid of Doflamingo and getting rid of the entire Don Quixote family are two different concepts. Rebecca raised her eyebrows, what do you mean? If you don't agree, I will only get rid of Doflamingo. I won't touch the others, because their strength can't cause any impact on me. Or after killing Doflamingo, I will directly take them as my younger brothers and let them be used by me. As he spoke, Mok's eyes lit up, as if he was quite interested. Rebecca's pupils shrank, because Mok could do this. The most important thing is that for Mok, this is the best choice, because, in this way, the benefits can be maximized. Everything of Doflamingo can be used for his own benefit. Gurgle, Rebecca swallowed her saliva. She even felt a little desperate, because once Mok replaced Doflamingo, the Dressrosa kingdom would never have a chance to restore its country. Seeing that the time was almost right, Mok immediately added, just to tell you, your father and grandfather are still alive. After that, he left without looking back. What? Rebecca exclaimed, her eyes widened, her expression seemed happy and worried. Come back. Please explain the matter clearly. Looking at Rebecca who was leaving, Thor was shocked that I was so anxious. Mok didn't stop, but he left a sentence, I don't want to deceive you. So, think about it. I will come again tomorrow. But remember, tomorrow is your last chance. After that, Mok disappeared. Rebecca stood there blankly, muttering to herself, so, Dad and Grandpa are still alive. Mok walked out, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. Rebecca's dress is really the same as in the original book. So cool. It's also convenient to do things. Of course, the most important thing is that her figure is top-notch. She should be straight, curvy, and thin, and her legs are long and straight. The key is that she is still tender and tender. Violet has long brown hair, beautiful light brown pupils, a red flower on her head, a flamenco dance costume, and a flower in her mouth. She is dancing flamenco. There are many people watching. However, while dancing, her movements could not help but freeze for a moment. Because she saw a person in the crowd, the people here were attracted by her dance and might not have noticed it. But she saw it at a glance on the stage. There was a flash of excitement in her eyes. She had been under Doflamingo for many years, so she naturally knew much more than Rebecca, and she knew how terrifying Mok's strength was. Of course, she also knew what kind of person Mok was. This was the ruthless man who killed Admiral Akainu. At the same time, she also understood. This was her only chance to kill Doflamingo, destroy the entire Don Quixote family, and restore the kingdom. How could she not be excited? She had much more experience than Rebecca, so she understood that if she wanted to get something, she had to pay something. Especially when she saw Mok's eyes, she understood. What did she need to pay to get Mok's help? She bit her lips lightly, just a little entangled, and she had already made a decision in her heart. She must satisfy Mok, at all costs.